Good day and welcome back to British Mirror. Imagine spending decades fighting for justice, finally getting a government to promise landmark transparency legislation in your name, only to watch that same government try to slip in a loophole so broad you could drive MI5's entire filing cabinet through it. That is precisely what is happening right now with the Hillsborough Law, and Labour MPs are absolutely fuming. The government is frantically trying to avoid yet another humiliating rebellion as campaigners and bereaved families accuse ministers of watering down a duty of candour that was supposed to hold everyone accountable, including the intelligence services. Nandy insists the spies will not be exempt, but the actual legislation tells a rather different story. We have got Burnham and Steve Rotheram calling for amendments to be withdrawn, Manchester Arena families pointing out that MI5 literally lied to a public inquiry with zero consequences, and Keir Starmer's authority hanging by a thread after 13 policy U-turns in recent months. This is not just another political skirmish. This is about whether Britain's intelligence services can continue operating in the shadows, even when their failures cost innocent lives. Quick favour, if you are as concerned about accountability in British institutions as these families are, hit that subscribe button and click the notifications bell. Over 94% of viewers have not subscribed yet. It is free, takes 1 second, and helps us keep shining a light on stories that matter. Cheers if you did. Now, back to this constitutional mess. Right, let us set the scene properly, because the Hillsborough Law is not just any piece of legislation. This is supposed to be landmark reform born from one of the darkest chapters in British legal history. The Hillsborough disaster in 1989 killed 97 Liverpool football fans, and what followed was decades of cover-ups, lies, and institutional failure. South Yorkshire police blamed the victims, doctored statements, and evaded accountability, whilst families fought tirelessly for truth. The Hillsborough Law, formerly known as the Public Office Accountability Bill, was meant to ensure that never happens again by creating a legal duty of candour on public servants. Tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth when giving evidence about events where people died or suffered serious harm. Simple concept, vital protection, broadly supported. Or at least it was until the government decided the intelligence services needed special treatment. Here's where things get properly messy. Amendments proposed by the government this week brought spies within the scope of the legislation, which sounds good until you read the fine print. They're only covered subject to the approval of the head of their service. Let that sink in for a moment. The intelligence agencies are covered by the duty of candour, unless the person running that intelligence agency decides they are not. It's like making traffic laws apply to everyone except drivers who get permission from themselves to ignore them. Campaigners immediately spotted this gigantic loophole and went ballistic. Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor and former Health Secretary who championed Hillsborough families for years, called on the government to withdraw the amendment, saying it creates too broad an opt-out for the security services. Liverpool City Region Mayor Steve Rotheram joined him, warning the change risks undermining the spirit of the legislation. When two major Labour mayors are publicly calling out their own party's government over legislation this significant, you know something has gone badly wrong. Culture Secretary Nandy found herself on the BBC's Sunday with Laura Kunsberg programme, desperately trying to hold the line, while simultaneously promising talks with families and campaigners. She insisted the security services will not be exempt, which is technically true in the same way as saying you are invited to the party, but only if the host personally approves your attendance each time is technically an invitation. Nandy told Kunsberg
that the challenge is to make sure that this applies to the security services without fear or favor, and that they can continue to do their jobs. There's the tension right there in one sentence. How do you create transparency without compromising operational security? It's a genuine dilemma, but the current solution looks suspiciously like letting intelligence chiefs decide when transparency is convenient for them. Now, before anyone accuses campaigners of being unreasonable or not understanding national security concerns, let us talk about why they are so insistent on this. The Manchester Arena bombing in 2017 killed 22 people, many of them children, when Salma the Beatty detonated a suicide bomb at an Ariana Grande concert. It was one of Britain's worst terrorist atrocities in recent history, and the subsequent inquiry revealed absolutely devastating failures by MI5. Sir John Saunders' scathing 226-page review found that spies failed to act on crucial intelligence that could have thwarted the attack. The intelligence could have led investigators to follow Abedi, who had documented links to ISIS and Al-Qaeda terrorists, to the Nissan Micra where he stored his explosives. He could potentially have been stopped at Manchester Airport when he returned from Libya 4 days before the attack. These were not minor oversights or unavoidable intelligence gaps. These were actionable leads that went unfollowed with catastrophic consequences. But here's what really sticks in the throat of the bereaved families. During the Manchester Arena inquiry, MI5 lied, not misremembered, not made honest mistakes, but actually lied about the key intelligence it held about the suicide bomber before the attack. The families put it bluntly in their statement. MI5 failed our loved ones and failed us. It did so by failing to prevent the arena bombing, but then failed and hurt us further through its lack of candour after the attack. Despite MI5 lying to a public inquiry in this way, no one has been held accountable. Let me repeat that for emphasis. Britain's Domestic Intelligence Service lied to a public inquiry investigating why 22 people, including children, were blown up, and nobody faced any consequences. Zero accountability, complete institutional impunity. And now the same organization is getting a special carve-out in legislation specifically designed to prevent public servants lying with impunity. Republican Congresswoman and Trump ally Anna Paulina Luna issued a warning that sounded less like diplomacy and more like a trailer for a sequel nobody asked for. If Britain bans X, she would push legislation to sanction not just Sir Keir Starmer personally, but Britain as a whole. Yes, you heard that correctly, sanctions. Miss Luna pointed to precedent. In 2024, the US imposed sanctions on a Brazilian judge who temporarily blocked X. Those measures included tariffs, visa revocations, and other consequences tied explicitly to free speech concerns. In other words, this is not theoretical, it has already happened elsewhere. Her message to Britain was unambiguous: reconsider this course of action or face consequences. Now, take a step back and appreciate the sheer absurdity of this moment. Britain, once famed for exporting liberal democratic values, is now being warned by American politicians that it risks sanctions for restricting free speech. The irony is so thick you could spread it on toast. Miss Luna went even further, framing the issue not as technical compliance, but as a political war against Elon Musk and free speech itself. That's a devastating line, because it reframes the entire debate. This is no longer about protecting children from artificial intelligence misuse. It becomes about whether the British state is comfortable suppressing platforms that host uncomfortable opinions. And this is where Sir Keir Starmer finds himself trapped between instincts. On one side, the loyally cautious internationalist who wants strong relations with the United States and a thriving technology sector. On the other, the political leader under pressure from activists, regulators, and party figures who view free speech platforms with suspicion. The danger here is escalation. Ban X or even seriously attempt it, and Britain risks retaliation. Not just rhetorical outrage, but economic consequences, tariffs, trade delays, diplomatic frost. At a time when growth is already fragile, that's a gamble bordering on reckless. And let us not forget the U-turn factor. Starmer's critics believe this ends the same way many of his toughest-sounding positions do: announcement, headline, backlash, quiet retreat. If that happens, the damage may already have been done, the signal sent, the trust shaken. This entire saga exposes a central tension in modern British politics: the desire to regulate speech in the name of safety versus the reality of living in a globally connected digital economy. You can't pull one thread without tugging the entire web. So, where does this leave us? With a Prime Minister facing pressure from regulators at home, allies abroad, and critics who see this as an attack on free expression dressed up as concern. With a government that wants American investment while antagonizing American tech. And with a public watching another culture war skirmish play out while the cost of living quietly hums in the background. If Sir Keir Starmer truly wants to protect children, the focus should be on enforceable, proportionate rules applied consistently across platforms, not grandstanding threats aimed at a single company because it happens to host inconvenient voices. Because once you start banning platforms, you don't just silence the people you dislike.